Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be interviewing Crew himself from the 1986 cult classic Rad, Bill Allen. I'm just so astounded that I'm going to be interviewing Bill Allen, and so many people I told about this interview messaged me on Facebook, just excited too. I did not realize how much of a cult following this movie has. Bill Allen was also in Robert Altman's Streamers. He was on shows like Amazing Stories, Alien Nation, Born on the 4th of July, the Oliver Stone movie with Tom Cruise, and so many others. And I'm going to have him on the show today to talk about all that stuff, and I can't wait. I want to give a shout out to Miss Misery, Raina Gillette, who's been on the show several times. She's a big fan of Rad, and I just wanted to give her a nice little shout out. And I'm so excited. So yeah, here is my interview with Bill Allen. Hey, Bill.
How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Well, it's such an amazing honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Amazing honor. Well, I will take that. I've had different reactions before, so thank you for that compliment.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, going back in time, I was reading that you made your stage debut in junior high school in a production of Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine. Was that when you decided you were going to pursue acting, or was that before?
No, this was just my first intro into a really good theater troupe.
Mm-hmm.
And so at almost a professional level, the director there was really, really an amazing guy. And so, no, it didn't occur to me at that point to try to be an actor. I became aware it's something that I could do.
I see.
No, but it didn't seem like it was possible as a vocation at that time.
Yeah. You had never done a school play or a community play before that?
No, and had no real desire before or after, as far as scholastic, high school or junior high. I was just very fortunate to be there at a slice of time, and personally, I was very impressed by this director's work. And my brother was in his troupe of players,
mm-hmm.
And so it was just an unbelievable opportunity, and then it came my way, just completely rather unexpected, and I was able to step up to the plate and work at a fairly, high professional level at that point. So it definitely made me realize there's a whole other world that existed that I love.
Nice. You're born in Kansas and raised in Texas?
That is true.
So after high school, did you move to New York to study acting?
I did not. I excuse me, was cast in my first movie out of Dallas, actually, and it was a lead role in a movie with very high caliber actors, Jose Ferrer and including a very young George Clooney, and his cousin Miguel, who we just lost 3 years ago. So again, out of nowhere, I was kind of thrust into this world that existed without me, and now I was a part of. And so, Dandelion Wine, that play, and They're Off, that movie, were very similar. In other words, my brother got me into those situations. It's not something I was looking for. He was going to be the big actor in the family, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And when these opportunities came up, he would think of me. And so this movie happened in 1982, and I had the lead role in it. And it allowed me to get my SAG card and some money in the bank. But I stayed in Dallas for another year or two and worked under the tutelage of Adam Rourke, who if you IMDb him, he's got a very cool resume. He was a big-time kind of biker actor in the 60s, and he ended up in Dallas after that horse racing movie that I starred in. He played my father in that, then he moved to Dallas and opened a film acting workshop. And I was probably the first student since, we were close friends. Brought my brother on. My brother was an instructor. And then a young Lou Diamond Phillips joined that class. And that's how I met Lou. So we go back that far and remain very close to this day.
Wow. And they're off. It was a racehorse movie, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it was directed by a cousin who I had no connection with beforehand. And he cast me in this role. It was way above my head as far as ability, and the material wasn't good, and I didn't know any better because I was surrounded by real cameras and real actors. I thought this is the way it goes down. Well, it turns out that guy was a complete nut job, and the producer ended up in jail for embezzling funds from his bank. I mean, it was a F show, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it was also a 6-month experience for me, hanging around these actors, Adam Rourke and certainly Miguel and George and these other people, and I just kind of got introduced to this world that I just immediately fell in love with. I thought that horse racing movie was kind of how things went down. Turns out I've never been in another set like that. It was pure insanity, which which I guess was part of the fun. But again, it gave me a feel for the business, and Miguel actually encouraged me to come out to Los Angeles. Pretty much demanded that I come out to Los Angeles after that. My brother was out, but staying in Miguel's mother's guest house at very close, and that was kind of my crazy entree into show business. That was probably in 1984. I came out to Los Angeles.
Wow. And that movie has never been seen anywhere?
Praise the Lord. I mean, it was not bad. It was awful. Awful. And
yeah.
So thankfully I didn't see it or parts of it till a few years later, and I nearly dropped out of the business. I hated people who encouraged me at the time. I'm like, well, how could you see that performance and think I had any business being on a film set? But I had grown as an actor, and it was just an awful movie. It wasn't my fault. It was, anyway, yeah, thankfully it's never seen the light of day. But again, it got me a SAG card and some money in the bank and allowed me to come out here with, an agent and to kind of hit the ground running.
Oh, crazy. You got to work with Robert Altman in the film adaptation of Streamers?
I did, and that was again in Dallas before I left for Los Angeles. And I was a real art house fanatic, and so was a huge fan of Robert Altman and the filmmakers that he kind of his contemporaries, I should say. So yeah, I get to work with him, and he was so incredibly kind to me, and like picked me out of the crowd to stand behind him, behind the camera, and watch what he did. And so yeah, I've just been so lucky. I've just been so lucky because I put effort into what I do, and I try to be professional. Mm-hmm. That's almost like hitting the lottery. Being in the room with somebody who you admire and really can learn from and takes a shine to you. That's happened several times in my life, and it's been transformative every time.
Mm-hmm. Were you familiar with the play first?
Yes, I had not seen the play, but I was a theater file at the time, I should say. Yeah, certainly. I guess it won the Pulitzers. It was a great play. It was one of the, playwrights of that era.
And I read it took like 3 weeks to film. Was it just a really, quick pace? I mean. Yeah,
they knew what they wanted. It all took place on one soundstage in Las Colinas there in Dallas, and I worked with Matthew Bodine, one of the stars of it, years later, and he said Robert Altman actually directed that to pay back gambling debt, which knowing Bob, that's not surprising at all. But it was actually a very good movie, and again, I was surrounded by just stellar actors. You know, I mean, really just, they were mostly New York theater, but certainly just unbelievably talented, and that kind of was my first really good credit, I would suppose.
Did you vote for Matthew Modine to be SAG president?
No, just between you and me, I stay out of that mess. I'm a union guy all day and night, but the politics that goes on is kind of like making sausage. You do not want to see how it goes down.
Yeah.
And so if he's got my spiritual vote, but I don't vote him as much.
Okay, good. Did David Alan Grier make everyone laugh on the set?
It was great. It was one of his first things. Everybody was funny on that set, but I had, my difficulty is I had to call him the N-word.
Yeah.
On set, as a part of the thing, and that's just always uncomfortable. It's just always uncomfortable, especially being from Texas and knowing that history. I mean, when I moved to Dallas, you could still see like the remnants of white Foley signs above the drinking fountains and stuff like that. So we were just like 15 years, 17 years out of the Jim Crow South when that happened. And so, certainly racial tensions and race played a part in that script. But, it's one thing to be asked to do something, do a task on set, but then you actually have to go out and do it, and kind of commit to it. So I was just like just like a sponge. I was trying to learn everything I could because I knew this was just a very auspicious occasion, and I was surrounded by kind of mega talent. So everybody was great and did their job, and it was a good movie.
Mm-hmm. It is a pretty good movie. Oh, I got to bring this up. You were on one of my favorite episodes of Amazing Stories.
That was a good one.
The Main Attraction?
The Main Attraction. What was the lead guy's name? Anyway, very talented.
John Kloof.
Lisa Jane Persky.
Yes.
And, right?
Yeah.
She was great. And I remember Brad Bird actually wrote that episode.
Right.
And played one of the scientists on it. So I got to hang with Brad Bird for a while, and it was before he became Brad Bird. But, so that was really cool. And also I remember John Candy stopping by the set. And I'm a huge SCTV fan.
Me too.
So, right? And so there I am, talking to a 6'4", 350-pound guy smoking, chain cigarettes. And, that doesn't get any cooler. So, for me, the greatest joy probably being in the business is the people you get to meet and hang out with. Not in a look at me, Ma, but getting personal connections with these people.
Yeah, that's amazing. The first, I got to interview Lisa when I first started the podcast, and I told her how much she terrified me with those braces and those glasses and how she was skating on her toes at the end there. And she laughed out loud because she just loved playing that character. She said that was one of her favorites.
She was awesome. And, of course, I rewatched The Great Santini recently, and she was great in that, right? So, yeah, she's strong.
She's great in everything. She should really make a comeback. I told her that, but she got fed up with the business. So with Rad, I was reading that you had done an episode of Hill Street Blues, and that's where Hal Needham discovered you.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I did. Again, it was, I was still in Texas and a nobody, and a window washer. I shouldn't say nobody. I was washing windows. I was doing good work, and that show was iconic. And so 2 years later, I'm on that show. So it was pretty head spinning, and you'd have to be old to remember it. But at the time, it was kind of groundbreaking cop show when that genre had been too well tread. And there I am getting to work with really, so again, a bunch of strong New York theater actors, but certainly the cream of the crop in network TV at the time. And I had a nice little role in it, and I got to storm and stomp my feet, and so it was a nice little showy role that Hal saw.
Mm-hmm.
But, I recently found out that there's a certain actor that the producers really wanted for that role, and Hal just liked me better.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, liked me better.
Was it a guy that went on to be...
And he got what?
I was going to say, was it a guy that went on to become hugely successful?
Yeah, I can't say his name.
I know.
His initials are Iron Man, so...
I'll figure it out later. Yeah, and I know you didn't have any experience riding BMX, but did you have to practice every day for months before the filming started?
I did. Somebody said, how could he win the hill track if he couldn't bunny hop a curve? So, really, it was a very quick process. In other words, I got cast, and probably the next month I was in Calgary shooting. And I'm only recently started riding BMX and learning tricks. And it's such a hazardous thing to learn. And it really probably was a good idea that I didn't try to learn a bunch of tricks, because in learning these tricks, you fall down hundreds of times, and some of those are injurious. So the fact that a lot of people just kind of bought the illusion that I'm Crew Jones, and that's all that matters. I still get very good riders today asking me if I did my own stunts. And if you look at the scenes that of me riding, me without the helmet, you can see I'm pretty lacking in bicycle skills. It's pretty embarrassing for me to watch now, because at least I can ride a bike believably, like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, like your only stunt was like crashing through the fence on the paper route.
Well, and even just like pedaling through the wood yard or through people's yard, it was just clumsy and just bad riding. It's just bad riding. There's no other way around it. And so, anyway, people bought it. And for the people who bought it, they love it. There's some people you're not going to please with that. There's certain old school people who got offended by the movie. I get it.
Yeah.
But for a lot of folks, as you know, it was their entree into that world, into BMX, seeing the first into all that stuff was very groundbreaking stuff at the time.
Yeah. Did you fall off the bike and get injured at all?
I did, yeah. Hit the wrong brake, went over the handlebars and smashed my head. So,
wow.
Again, a lot of the stuff that's second nature to the professional guys, I was still learning while I was on the set, basically. But the people who get hurt the most are the professional guys. There's so it's one of those things that the better you get at it, the more risks you have to take to really push the envelope, and so I keep it safe as much as I can. But I've nearly been rushed to the ER a couple of times.
Yeah. I can't believe this movie isn't available on DVD or Blu-ray.
Well, it's not. So.
It's what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, news, I don't have a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge...
On Facebook.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, you're breaking up.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it will be out on Blu-ray this year, and there may be a theatrical release also.
Oh, good. Wow. Finally, it's about time. Yeah, it was a...
About time.
It was a huge VHS seller back in the late 80s, and it was on HBO like every other day for a couple of years, and then it just completely disappeared from TV, but people remained, renting it from the video store.
Well, and that was back in the day when a video would cost you $150, so very few people, and they didn't even sell them. In most cases, you could only rent them.
Yeah.
So the typical story is the kid would just rent it over and over and over again, and then just, quote, forget to return it or say it was stolen. And so that's how most people acquire their VHSs, and they hold a lot of value today. There's a lot of bootleg DVDs out there, as I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
But there is a commentary reel that I did with a lot of the guys, Bart, Sam, the writer, Jose, Inez, Eddie, Martin, and it's on iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can sync it up with the movie, and it's like a commentary reel, and that's called Rad Behind the Scenes. That's like 99 cents on iTunes. So, and like did that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's good. That's going to be really cool when it comes out on Blu-ray. Did Hal Needham become a mentor to you?
I guess unconsciously, we were never that close as friends, but I certainly spent a lot of time with him and got to know him pretty well. And then towards the end, the 25th anniversary, he came up to Canada for, and we ended up doing some press together and spending a lot of time and a couple of events back here, a couple of screenings. So we did get kind of tight at the end and talked a lot more than we had in the previous years. And Southern Gentleman,
yeah.
I think that's what he saw in me, when I actually walked in the office. So we got along on that level. And then if you haven't read his autobiography, Hollywood Stuntman, I highly recommend it. It's mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things that if you don't actually know the history, it's not available, common knowledge, but his book is just one of the great showcase autobiographies. And so he was the toughest guy in the room, had all the great stories, knew every star of the day, and had doubled for them or worked with them. So yeah, he had great stories. And I just remember the night before we started filming, I show up in Calgary and we sit down for a drink, and he asked me just one thing. I'm asking you, just don't be late to set. And I've never been late to a set in my life. And he said he just got finished directing Cannonball Run 2 with
right.
Shirley MacLaine and Dean Martin and Sammy and Frank and
right.
the whole crew, and they had 25 star trailers out in the desert, and nobody would show up on set until everybody else was on set. So it was kind of a nightmare. So he just had a lot of great stories. Yeah, I was very lucky to be in the same room, and certainly we wouldn't be talking right now if it weren't for Hal's intervention into my life. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, this movie was a huge departure for him too, because he did all those race car movies with Burt Reynolds. He did do a couple of departures in between. He did a Western with Arnold Schwarzenegger called The Villain, and he did a really bad bikers in outer space movie called Megaforce with Barry Bostwick. But this was a big departure for him. Do you know what attracted him to this movie?
I think just the sport itself. He got introduced to the sport through Martin Aparicio and Woody Ibsen were doing a demo. And so somehow he caught wind of that and saw the demo and decided he could make a movie out of that.
Oh, okay.
That's my understanding. That's my understanding of the true genesis of it, is he said there's a movie there. So that's when he got his partners involved, Robert Levy, and then they brought Van Bernard on to write it. But we can thank Hal for so much. And again, it's one of those things that if you don't know the backstory, you can't appreciate how much he did for the industry. So, he really was an integral part of making NASCAR as big as it is now, blowing it up, kind of putting the pit crew in sharp dress coveralls and having cheerleaders in the infield and all this telemetry inside the car. And I think with Rad, he was trying to do the same thing. In other words, the original script of Rad was just a BMX race. Mm-hmm. I've been to 1,000 BMX races and they're fun, but they're no hell track.
Yeah.
Right? So he came up with a 20-foot drop in the cereal bowl and these impossible things that had never been seen before since. And so I think because of that, Nitro Circus and the Huck Tour and the Do Jam and all that stuff got started a lot quicker. But he certainly is kind of the grandfather of all that, and nobody really can appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. That's a shame that they don't appreciate it because he was great. How was working with Lori Loughlin?
Pre-jail Lori Loughlin was fine. She's cute and sweet, and we kind of dated for about 30 seconds till I screwed that up.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I've got a lot of mixed feelings about Miss Lori, and I feel really bad about what's going on, and I don't know who to feel bad about the most, and the cards haven't really been all laid on the table, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And so I love her, and I wish her the best. That's all I can say. Hold on.
How about working with Talia Shire?
She was amazing. Amazing. Again, a very high caliber performer, as was Jack Weston and Ray Walston. Mm-hmm. So that was very smart of Hal to bring in these very seasoned performers to do kind of, excuse me, Sam, mediocre-ish material or material that just had been done 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So so that's kind of where you separate the men from the boys in being able to be inventive and interesting and compelling, like the moment that Jack Weston has with me in the car, and I'm like, you and me, we don't think the same, and I get out, and he's like, you listen, you'll learn. That whole thing. Yeah. It's gold, and it was completely a mistake that he wove into the thing. It's capturing lightning in a bottle. That's what filmmakers are trying to do. And so you can look at a movie like Rad. I think it's a great example where you can just point out, well, who were the local hires and who were the ringers, the really good actors who were brought in to move this thing forward. I think it's pretty detectable, except in the case for Jamie Clark, who played my best friend. Mm-hmm. And I think he's fantastic in it. I think he's a great personality, and he on screen and off. He's a world-class mountain climber now. But of anybody, the local actors, he's probably my favorite performance in the movie. He's just great in it.
Yeah, he's a good example of a guy, who probably could have been a huge star if he had decided to go that way.
That's true. He is dedicated beyond measure. He's climbed the 7 highest mountains on each continent, the 7 Sisters, and summited Everest twice. Yeah.
Yeah. How about working with Alfie Wise?
The best. So funny. And was a friend of Burt Reynolds and Hal, obviously.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of those stories, which I live for.
Yeah.
One of the things I remember about Alfie, he remember that racial stereotype character, the Frito Bandito.
Yeah.
sold Fritos chips. I mean, the guy was probably Italian, but he said he would go down to the jungles of Guatemala and put on a big stupid mustache and do a photo shoot that would last. The campaign would last throughout the year, and they would just pay him in pesos, and he would leave. Yeah, Alfie was great. All these, the guys you're talking about, Alfie and Hal. Certainly, these are all guys, and so I tended to gravitate towards the stuntmen on that
Yeah.
Twinkle toes don't really. The twinkle toes who complain about their age, and I don't, you know, I don't really have time for it. But somebody who's willing to sit on a box full of dynamite, you know, that this is somebody I want to get to know a little better.
Yeah, he was always a staple in Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham's movies. He's always so funny in those movies. Yeah. Is it true the original title of the movie was Balls Out?
I don't know the original title of the movie. I've heard that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do know the script. The script went through several iterations. In other words, Crew was kind of a bad kid, kind of a delinquent.
Yeah.
In the earlier versions of the script, and that was not the case, obviously, in Rad. And all the SAT stuff was added later. I understand, as was L-Track, you know, and so for better or worse, it made an impact, and I owe that mostly, obviously, to the bikers, the biking experts, and the people who staged it, Pat Romano and Eddie and Martin and the people who designed that Hell Track. So, you know, I think it was a nice little movie, but then you add all those other elements in, and people are still talking about it.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of how much of a cult success this movie had until I was researching and stuff. But I've always liked the movie, you know. You did an episode.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no.
I was just going to say it has an effect like I've never really seen in another movie. In other words, I can't tell you how many little kids I've met named Crew Jones. I hear of another one every month at least, maybe more. And, you know, signing my name on somebody's skin, and then they go get it inked in.
Wow.
Wow. So I've had war vets hand me a flag, or this one in particular,
yeah,
a flag that he kept inside his flak vest every rescue mission that he flew in Afghanistan, which he flew many.
Wow.
So, you know, I can't kind of really take credit for that kind of devotion. I watch it happen and am amazed and really pleased.
Yeah, that's great. You did an episode of Alien Nation.
What a world, yeah. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, I remember the movie too with James Caan.
Yeah, the movie was pretty good, right? With Mandy Patinkin, am I right? And James Caan.
Yeah.
I don't think the TV series lived up to that, but yeah, that was the only time I've ever done prosthetics makeup. You know, the full-on alien head, and we're playing a game of Russian roulette with salt water, because salt water burns right through these aliens, as I remember. So I had this big open wound on my stomach and chest they had to make for the show. And I just remember we took some Polaroids of that. My friend worked at Purina. The dog chow company is like a scientist, and he handed it to one of the other engineer scientist guys. He's like, "Look what our monkey chow did to this guy," you know, and it was funny. Anyway, yeah, that was a short-lived series, and but like I said, it was the only time I ever did prosthetics, and I'm glad I did it once, and hope to never do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. How was making Born on the 4th of July?
It soon became more about the training and the camaraderie between the Marines, former Marines, ex-Marines, Marine Reserve guys that they had train us. The lead character in that was a friend of mine named Dale Guy, who was an ex-Marine, and he tracked down Oliver Stone for Platoon and ended up training all the actors for that show. Actually had a nice role in it himself, and then he trained the actors for all of Oliver's Vietnam movies. Born on the 4th, there's Heaven and Earth, and he also did the training for the actors for Saving Private Ryan. So he takes these actors out in the middle of nowhere, unnamed jungle. We were in Texas and the Philippines. And there's about 2 weeks of real jungle warfare training. It's not boot camp. They don't have time for that.
Yeah.
I can tell you, these Marines, drill instructors and full-on Marines, they're really good at brainwashing and getting you overtired and getting you willing to be programmed and believe in anything they tell you. But, you know, you just give up, and then you saw Full Metal Jacket. There's a switch that flips, and it's usually you do it internally, willingly. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be that killing machine. And so these guys are very adept at getting you to flip that switch inside yourself. And since it's your decision, it makes it even more powerful. You think it's your decision. It ain't your decision. These guys are great at brainwashing people. There's no other way to put it. And I love them, and I became friends with Dan By. But to get a farm boy to be a stone-cold killer within 3 months, they don't need 3 months. They need 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They're good at it. You know, and we can thank God that we have these people in uniform doing what they're doing. And I guess my takeaway from that, it was about the Vietnam era, was, you know, which is a war that I'm still wildly against and was at the time because I remember it, is that the politics that got the soldiers on the battlefield have zero to do with the heroics that is displayed on that battlefield. Because the soldiers are just doing their job, right? They're just doing what they're told. But nothing is worth that kind of money. You got to have your heart and soul in it. And so I love the servicemen, and whenever I meet a Marine, I feel a special camaraderie with these people. And maybe you know this, maybe you don't. So I'm, 10 years later, whatever, I'm watching, what's the Ben Stiller movie about with Robert Downey in blackface?
Oh, Tropic Thunder. Yeah.
Tropic Thunder. It shows Ron Kovac behind the camera. I just saw the opening recently. So I was having, somebody wrote a movie about training under Dale Dye and made a movie about it called Tropic Thunder, right?
Yeah.
So the training gets too intense. You can't tell who's on what side. We were actually in the Philippines with communist insurgents fighting around. There's gunfire going off, and we're supposed to be making a movie. So somebody got that. Somebody trained with Dale or something, and ended up making Tropic Thunder. I haven't researched it because I don't have to. I saw the thing. I'm like, oh, somebody made a movie out of it, out of the behind the scenes, which is usually more interesting than what goes on in front of the camera.
Yeah. It's funny how in Born on the 4th of July, you play a character named after Oliver Stone's breakout movie, Platoon.
Yeah, well, Oliver and I, we had kind of a spy history, and I didn't help it, and he didn't help it, but he's who he is, and I'm happy to have had that time with him, and even though, it didn't go the way I wanted it to, I got that kind of initiation experience. It was late in life, well into my 20s, but I went in kind of a kid, and they made a man out of me, for better or worse.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any interaction with Tom Cruise?
Oh, yeah, he was trained with it the whole time. I came to like Tom. After you get over the movie star aspect, he's one of the guys and a very strong leader and took his role very seriously, but he was a hoot. We had a bunch of laughs and ended up hanging out with him in New York for rehearsals, so he took us out drinking. I had, probably had dozens of meals with the guy in the Philippines, but, I remember being at his apartment in New York, and then we all went out to dinner that night, and my friend Brandon Lee was in town promoting one of his movies, doing a TV show, something, and so I invited Brandon out to meet us, and so I introduced him around, and Brandon's like selling. He didn't like being the least famous guy in the room, especially when Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. Mm-hmm. So he felt intimidated, and by that time, I wasn't intimidated at all. He was a friend of mine. I John looked him in the eye and really kind of freaked out.
Oh.
For somebody of Tom's stature, Bruce is he's the guy. He's the mold, right?
Yeah.
Or the mold breaker. So, we ended up drinking heavily and going having taxi cab races through New York and playing many rounds of pool. So memories like that of getting smashed with Tom and Brandon and having a night on the town, you can't, that's gold for me. These memories are mine, and I love that I was there at a certain time and place to watch this go down. Certainly with Brandon and others I've got to know who are now just worldwide icons, to be there at the humble beginnings of all that, that's pretty fun,
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about your friendship with Lou Diamond Phillips. How is he as a director?
Lou's great. Lou's amazing. He just directed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I guess, and he directed some Longmire episodes. So he's a highly sought-after director himself in a very competitive game. Right now, he's doing amazing work on this show, Prodigal Son, on Fox on Mondays.
Mm-hmm.
And we're currently, I'm doing a documentary on Brandon Lee right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully that'll be out this year. Lou's going to work on that. He knew Brandon also very well. And then we're trying to get a narrative movie that Lou and I wrote about Brandon.
Oh, that's awesome. I remember you did some episodes of the short-lived Western The Lazarus Man.
Holy shit. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, yes. Wow. You know who was on that episode?
Who?
That became a big deal? John C. Reilly.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And he looked, we were playing high schoolers, and he looked then like he does today. It's like, what is this 40-year-old guy doing in a high school classroom? I'm like, obviously, this guy ain't going anywhere. Dude, I know nothing. That's all I know is I know zero, because he's truly a fine actor. Not just a little bit. He's the real good. I saw him in a Esco play out here 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Exit the King, and he got my attention. So, yeah, it's a small kind of pool even today, and so if you work with a lot of people, you're gonna see people come and go, explode into hyperspace, just kind of leave like Miss Lisa Jane, or or be more successful than their own good. I can tell you, I worked with Robert Urich.
Yeah.
One of his last shows, Lazarus Man, and he seemed miserable to me.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who had done thousands of TV episodes. I don't know. He'd starred in 40 series probably. I mean, literally, it was just amazing, his resume.
Yeah.
And by the time I worked with him, he was over it. So, and then of course, 4 years later, he was gone. In my mind, they might have a connection. Being miserable, even at the highest level, he could have checked out. He could have gone fly fishing in Switzerland. If you're not Dustin Hoffman, if that's what he wanted out of the business and that wasn't happening for him, then go find another passion. Especially if you have FU money,
Yeah.
But it's hard to turn down a series. It's hard to turn down money. It's hard to walk away from the only thing you know. I get this, and I also get the fact that you can get used to any particular situation, good or bad, pretty quickly. Humans adapt and then kind of take for granted whatever's going on around them. And if you're still not passionate about what you're doing, the trappings make it worse. They don't make it better. That comfy bed at night becomes really uncomfortable if you're not happy with your life and you see it kind of slipping away in ways that you didn't want or didn't expect.
Yeah, it was pretty sad how that show ended the way it did, because he got cancer and all.
Well, he went on to do the Emerald series, right? I think he did one more show after that.
Yeah, I think that was his last one. Or I know he did the Love Boat Revival series after this.
He couldn't stop working. He was one of those guys, 6.5 feet tall and gorgeous, and everybody knew his name. So he was kind of a staple.
Yeah. So, did you quit acting for a while?
No, I've never quit acting. I'm producing right now and deeply involved in some music and writing. I've got a writing session as soon as we're off the phone for hopefully the next feature film I want to do. So I'm one of these people that kind of gets bored easily, but I've got a lot of interest, and I'm living the life that I came out here to live.
Do you have any projects that you can talk about?
Well, I told you I'm producing the Brandon Lee documentary. I'm very excited about that. As far as an acting thing, like I said, we're having this writing session afterwards. We're looking at getting back into the action genre with some producing partners of mine, and working on a narrative about somebody in the extreme sports world. So, I've built up a really nice fan base, and I think they're ready for what comes next. And so am I, frankly. So yeah, that's kind of my focus right now. And I've got a book coming out wide this year. It was self-published, but now actual publisher has picked it up, and it's coming out in bookstores and audiobooks, and that is called My Rad Career. So I'm really actually very excited about this book. I kind of wrote it with the fans in mind because there's a lot of interest in that movie. But basically it covers my whole career, everything that we talked about, my high school plays and They're Off and Lazarus Man. So again, like how it looks, like there's a lot of things that I've done that nobody would know about, and apparently people are highly amused. So it's going to be at a bookstore near you. But in the meantime, you can go to myradcareer.com and find the first edition. So the second edition will be out in bookstores.
Nice. You gonna put any scandalous stuff in that book?
Well, here's the thing. There is some scandalous stuff in the first edition, and I've had to redact it for the second edition. So if you want the unredacted, scandalous first edition, I've got about 50 copies left, and then after those are gone, we're gone.
Yeah.
And, I had to change some things, and I'm going to have to probably remove some photographs because I've got pictures of Clooney and Cruz and Lori Loughlin, and I'm having trouble getting clearance for those photographs. So, yeah, there's stuff in the first edition that won't be in the second edition, and vice versa. I added about 15 pages of new material for the second edition.
Nice. So February 14th through 16th, you'll be at Cult Classic Con in Bastrop, Texas. How long have you been doing the signing shows?
Probably since the 25th anniversary. I got reconnected with the BMX world, and then not long after that, I wrote my book and started going to a lot of BMX races, but also to screenings. And I'm friends with Eddie Fiola and Mark Apparillo, and we've been to 4 different countries together: New Zealand, Australia, England, Canada, doing these screenings and doing Q&A afterwards and signing autographs and talking to the fans. I can't tell you how many rad fans I've met. And one of the questions I get a lot is, do you ever get sick of it? And the answer is a resounding no. It's really great. People are so kind. And when I meet him face-to-face for the first time, I watch a 40-year-old man transform into a 12-year-old boy right in front of my eyes. It's so fun.
Yeah, the convention scene has really blown up the last decade or so. It's just incredible. I thought I was the only one who liked all these movies, you know? It's crazy.
Right.
Do you ever get booked in California?
Yeah, I do a lot of events everywhere, actually. Did Spokane and Seattle last year, and talking about Kansas City and Indiana this year so far, and maybe back to England towards the end of the year.
Well, next time you're in California, and I'm nearby, I'll come meet you.
Where are you in Cali?
Well, I live in Redding, but I go out to San Francisco and LA and Sacramento for conventions, a few times a year.
I'm sure I will meet you face to face. I'm trying to get some stuff going that will take me to probably several of these cities.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope all those projects turn out well for you. I'll be keeping an eye out for that Brendan Lee documentary and your book, My Rad Career. And I hope you have a lot of fun at that convention. And I thank you so much for coming on today, Bill.
It's been a pleasure, Tommy. Anytime.
Thank you so much. You have yourself a great day.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Well, there you have it. Bill Allen. Ain't he a cool dude? He is radical. Totally radical. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dude.